paid twice a month, right? Now they're unemployed, or they have a period of unemployment or underemployment where they're not making that much money. They have existing debts, the car payment, all the other stuff. They've never bought insurance. They've never done a lease agreement. They lived in the barracks, as we all know. They don't even know how to cook. And so when I was looking at all that, I thought, man, again, we're not framing it right. Yeah, they have one heck of a resume they've got, but they don't even know how to eat properly and have nutrition classes.
You're listening to the 7 Echo Podcast, brought to you by 7 Eagle Group, the place where we highlight inspiring and interesting United States military veterans who have found a successful civilian career after trading in their uniforms.
Hello, and welcome to 7 Echo Podcast. I am your host, Heather Clark, and with me today is Mr. Michael McDowell, who is a Marine veteran, and if I'm not wrong, currently a new doctor. Is that correct?
I am. So if you ask me, is there a doctor in the house? I'll say yes.
Now you can say yes.
But I can't. Awesome. But I can't really help people. I mean, in terms of helping them with life-saving events, I certainly can get the research on it.
That's awesome. Congratulations. I know how much work goes into that because I'm going back into grad school myself. So I know how much work goes into just trying to get the degree done, and especially, the dissertation and everything like that. So thank you so much for being here today, Michael. You're also the president and CEO of something called the Valor Club, which we'll get into a little bit later. But can you tell the audience, who is Michael McDowell? Where did you grow up? What made you decide to join the Marines? And what did you do while you were there?
Well, Heather, thanks for having me. I'm really honored. And first of all, thank you for your help with your part of my journey in my doctoral program.
You're so welcome.
300 other great people who have volunteered for surveys and harassment from the doctoral level students. But no, I'm Mike McDowell, and who am I? I don't know. I'm evolving all the time. I grew up in a small community in Eastern Oregon, and I was an athlete in high school, for a small school. And I was a teacher. I got involved in education. I always loved teaching people and learning and all that. And then went in the Marine Corps when I was 30 and went to OCS. Of course, 9/11 happened when I was at the basic school. And I don't know, 16 years later, retired in August of 2016, had six combat deployments during that time with the Marine Corps, and served with some great people who are certainly my heroes. And they're the ones deserving of all the credit, not me. They're the ones that were doing the work, day in and day out. And so I was an artillery guy by trade, and I got out. I took the TERA, the transition early retirement, temporary early retirement that President Obama had for those folks that had certain MOSs, infantry, artillery, and so they were trying to draw down the force structure. So I took it and, basically tried to transition myself into something of work. I didn't know what I wanted to do. That was one of the interesting things. I was living in Temecula at the time, California, and went back to school during that last year or so of my active duty service, finished my MBA from USC. I figured that'd be a good way to kind of enter and launch into the private sector. As we talked about before, I didn't really have a personal brand in terms of being artillery guy. If you don't, most people don't do what they did in their MOS, right? So, I was going to figure out what I wanted to do. So that's what I did, and graduated in 15. And then, of course, launched and did my EAS in August of 16, and then got involved in kind of nonprofit, two nonprofits in like 3 years. And then, of course, got involved with the Valor Club by dumb luck, and just really was given an opportunity, the timing to time everything together with that. So tied the doctoral work in with what we're doing at the Valor Club. So that's really kind of what I am. I mean, I'm a social entrepreneur, I think. I always like to I'm a practitioner. I love the scholarly part of it, but I
Me
love
too.
fixing problems. I don't want to just talk about them and pontificate. I want to be able to help people. And I've made so many mistakes in my life, uh, you know, not necessarily all mine, but maybe process or policy driven that, could be better. And like, hey, we can make it, we can change it. Why don't we do that? And this makes sense to me. And this is the reasons why, and it'll be more efficient. And so that's what really drives me, is just helping people. So that's me.
And what interests me on the research aspect is my background is in psych and public health too. Is I see the difference when I'm doing podcast interviews with different people that have gone and got their education. And I think it was last year I was taking a class where we were looking at what helps people transition easier.
Mhm.
And we talked about this before with your work and having, tools and schools skill sets. I've talked to other veterans, what should you have before you get out? And, having an education, while it may not be what you do, just like you said, you may not always do your MS. I think education on anything, not necessarily degree, can help you transition better when you're out of the military. I think that a lot of active duty, if you're listening to this program, take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you. You may not be able to finish your degree, but if you can take some classes to have a better understanding of the world and yourself,
Mhm.
I think that's going to make your life easier when you get out and transition, because research has shown more educated people have less issues,
Mhm.
just dealing with overall life in general and understanding bigger perspectives. So did you um, personally, you've got your education, you had your master's when you get out. Did you personally struggle since you did 6 combat tours coming back into civilian world?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, that's a good question, Heather. And I don't think it's possible as a human being, with the conceptual lenses that we have in terms of our ethics and values and how we see the world, you can go into environments like that and not come back a little disjointed. It, you know, it, and I mean, literally, I just don't believe that. And then, so that's always been something that has been in the back of my mind when it came to research, because I thought, ultimately the problem of practice that we all have, and this is where I kind of focus my dissertational work. Just so you know, my background is in ed psych. So um, I love learning, right? Learning drives me, and it drives everybody, and it should drive you till you put one foot in the grave, because at the end of the day, we're continually learning and evolving. So
Every
when
day.
you say, well, I'm done with school, I'm not learning, I'm done. I'm not, well, I don't believe that, because you're going to, learn how to tie flies for a hobby, essentially you got to learn how to do it. And so when you look at all these things, I think it's very important to know where you sit in a didactic timeline, right? So when I say that, I was always driven by, why do some vets succeed and other ones don't, right? I mean, because we go through the same challenges. I mean, you and I could go through the same deployment, and let's say we were simplified by, we did 4 years and got out, right? Both of us. We went to the same boot camp. We went to infantry or ITB, Infantry Training Battalion. We got to the same unit. We did the same things. We went to combat once. We went to the same same experience, came back. But then you're fine, and I have issues. Where did that come? And in psychology, the mind, very, very, it's a soft science in terms of what we study. And I just couldn't buy the fact it was all PTS. And the more research I started cracking this code, I'm like, I think it's overstated. I don't think, how does somebody that doesn't even have a deployment come back, or, get out of service, have PTS? So when I was starting to really wrap my arms around the evidence that's there, the numbers didn't really support. That's the problem that keeps people, that's the challenge that keeps people from being successful. So when we look, we don't even know statistically. Well, first of all, if we even when you get diagnosed with PTSD, or maybe you have anxiety disorder or whatever you might have, we don't know when that happened. We don't know we're roughly between 8 and 20%. We think in that range, people have PTS in the service that leave. And that's a very, very, very broad window. And then how
Mhm.
many of those people had trauma related things happen to them before they got in the service
Before,
that
yeah.
were exacerbated? We don't know that. And so when we're trying to solve these problems and create evidence-based solutions, I don't think we're framing the transition correctly. That's where I was driven by trying to examine that a little bit more in depth. And what I've shown over the research for the last 3 years and work, hopefully, and I've got some follow-on stuff that I'm playing with right now with another study, um, is its failure to assimilate. It's the failure to integrate into the society. When we look at the young vets that or the young service members that we're recruiting before they even join, they're 17, 18 years old. They've never lived autonomously as an adult. And so now you're taking this young Heather, young Mike, they live with their parents, as functional or dysfunctional as that may be, but we really didn't have to worry about where we were living. I mean, or maybe we had a car payment, or we
Right.
paid our insurance, we had a part-time job, but that's not autonomy. That's still codependent living in terms of you have to rely on somebody interdisciplinary or interoperable um, support you need. So now we take Heather and Mike, we immediately inundate you into a socialized culture. It's a socialized culture, period. It is
Mhm.
everything's taken care of for you. You make no decisions really. You dress the same, you have the same ethos, your job, you're getting paid twice a month, whether you're a dirt bag or you're a top one percenter, the mission. Again, you have a self identity of a community, and now you do 4 great years, you leave, and now we say, hey Heather, congratulations, you're DD 214. Here's all your resources. By the way, we're going to land jam you with 1 week's worth of course in TAP, transition systems program, which by the way is the worst form of learning you could ever give anybody in terms of retention. And by the way,
Right.
we're not even gonna do an assessment at the end to really know what you know. We're just gonna tell
We're
you how
gonna
to make
check the box that we did it.
well, it's bureaucratic, and that's okay. That's what the government does. But when you say, is it being effective? Is what we're doing today effective? And the
Mhm.
question is, or really the comment is, we really don't know because we don't examine it. We don't evaluate it at the end, And really, if I want to know how much Heather knows after a week's worth of training, whatever that training is, it could be anything, I have to do an assessment at the end, probably one at the beginning to see what you know already,
Mhm.
one maybe at the middle, and then one at the end to see what you've retained and kept over time. Because that's where we're making the mistake. Because in actuality, even that assessment at the end doesn't necessarily identify how much you can retain, because again, you're
Right.
going from working memory to long-term memory, and that transition into memory takes repetition, practical application. You can learn how to bake a cookie, great. Well, if you don't touch that recipe again for 2 years, you're going to have to go back to the book, and you're not going to be proficient, but you have context, you
Mhm.
have something to evaluate it with. But over time, we have to be able to create uh, relearning, I guess, as a civilian, and during the reentry process. That's what they don't share with you. So that's what we wanted to do. That's what the gaps were, um, per my writing and research, and that was really what drove me every day during this long process. But it was very energizing because I was like, we're not doing this right. We can do better. And so anyway, so that's kind of
And
my
I absolutely agree with that. And that kind of leads into what we were talking before we started the show is what does your personal brand look like when you get out of the military? And why is networking so important after you get out?
well, Heather, and you hit it on the head there. I mean, I think one of the concerns I have for young people leaving the service, and young people and older people, because obviously, I wasn't so young when I left, but when you look at these transition members, they're versed in education first, which that's how they've been cultivated through the private sector and through the
Mhm.
military. So they're going to take every class they can, PMP, all the, project management courses, the safety certifications, which is great, good on you. You're going back to school even, that's great. But the challenge is we don't get hired because we're smart. We get hired because we're networked, because that's one of the things. Yeah, you got to keep the job by being intelligent, but at the end of the day, we're looking as employers as the ability to bring Heather on because she's well networked, because then she brings that to the table. That's almost what we used to call a book. When you bring in a sales rep, you're bringing in a sales rep not because they can retain a lot of information, it's because they've got a book of clients already, right? And so now that and you're an insurance salesman in a company. I'm going to hire you. That's the mindset of a lot of these employers. But the myth is that you can write a good resume, you can go on Indeed or whatever this, the online LinkedIn, and you can get a job. And quite frankly, that's not what the research shows. I spent a lot of time on this during my master's work at USC. And and this was back in 2014, and the numbers were staggering. If you put out a resume to someone you don't know, or a company you don't know, or anybody in that company you don't know, you have to put in between 800 and 1,000 resumes to get one interview. It blew my mind when I saw
That's
them.
overwhelming. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you're wondering why you're not getting callbacks, right?
Mm.
But if I can throw, hey, I know Heather Clark, she works at Toyota. She's in marketing. I'm not interested in marketing. I'm interested in operations. Great. If I can reach out to you and build a relationship with you, doing informational interviews and those type of things, and I specifically, hey, there's a job that came up, Heather, in operations, I think I'd be a good fit. Would you be willing to help me on that? And if you throw my resume, and I send you my resume, you send it over, you hand walk it down to HR, you have an 80% chance of getting an interview. Now, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get the job, but you're going to have a chance to be competitive for that job. What people don't realize, and especially staff NCOs, officers, and even field grade officers, is they're going to come out of the military, and they're going to make the money they made coming out. And I got to be honest with you and everybody who's listening to your show. That is a false premise. You're not going to make the money that you made in the service, unless, of course, you're a lawyer or you're a pilot or something of those unique MOSs. Because you're competing. First of all, if you're looking for $100,000 a year job, those things are pyramided out, right? There's only so many positions that make that kind of money or above.
Now you have new competition.
Well, exactly. So now Heather, let's say Heather is the veteran and I'm not. So you leave and you say, hey, I want to get this job in operations. Great. And now you're competing with me, who is a non-veteran, who has, by the way, 15 years of industry experience in entertainment. Let's say you're I'm in Los Angeles, you're working for, Comcast or NBC or whatever. They're not going to hire you. They're going to hire me every single time because I have a brand. I'm less risk. There's no question. If you had a senior person on the hiring side, I know Heather. She's got the skills we're looking for. That is not going to get articulated to somebody that's not a veteran, that's in the HR department. It's just not going to happen because, again, they're not going to risk you for that. So I think that if you have that in mind, you're not going to make 100 grand. You're going to make 60 or 70 grand. It is what it is. Now you can get there over time, but the process is you have to network. You have to do informational interviews. I tell people it's almost like fishing with dynamite. It is so easy. This is an easy process. We make it hard. The key thing, and this is, by the way, $120,000 I'm going to give you for free and all your listeners. Okay. This is all my school. This is the bottom line. So I'm giving you a great deal today.
The cost of a degree.
It is. So this is literally gold. Okay. And I did this in person and it worked for me. And I'm not very smart, so I can tell you that it works for anybody. You go out, everyone goes into LinkedIn. So you go into LinkedIn and you type, for example, go to Google. So you have two windows open. Go to Google, and let's say we want to work at Toyota. We were talking about that before. So I'm going to go in and put in a search with quotation marks, Toyota, put a comma there, put another quotation mark inside, veteran or Marine Corps or whatever, comma, USC, or University of Southern California, whatever, in quotation marks. So you have 3 different search filters. You push return on the computer, and you're going to get a list of everybody that's at Toyota that has veteran in their profile, or that has somebody that has USC in their profile on LinkedIn.
Boolean searches, yeah.
Yep. Now you just opened up the gates, because now what I do is I go to every single one of those people. I don't care what department they're in. And I do a quick introductory letter. Hey, Heather, I'm Mike McDowell. I'm transitioning Marine officer. I'm looking at, coming in to San Antonio, Texas. I know you're in Texas now, and you've been there. You got out separated, 10 years ago. Could we sit down and have a cup of coffee? Or, now it's virtual. Can we just do an informational interview?
And LinkedIn is great for setting up those parameters to do those searches to connect to.
And like we said, you're in marketing. I want to go into operations. So it's not even the same equal yoke, but who do you know? Everybody in operations.
Can you introduce me?
Yep. And so that's exactly. So that's how you get interviews. That's how you get and crack this code. It's not about racing to get every PMP and all that. Because at the end of the day, they're going to train you. These companies are going to train you because they got too much.
What they need you to do.
Exactly. So don't stress so much on the front end to be so competitive, like in your mind, got to get this stuff. That's not going to hurt you, but don't stress over it to ruin your own end state, if that makes sense. So, so that's what you do. So the other thing, again, I'm giving you 22,000 of free stuff here. So then you go up, you interview, Heather, I'm who I am, blah, blah, blah. We have, by the way, it's a great avenue for getting lunch paid for every time. So once this COVID thing, it's like, again, you never pay for a meal because, one, you're not a threat because I'm one of you. Either I'm a veteran, or you and I both went to USC or whatever. And then you're going to actually find out different things about you. I'm going to find out all sorts of your profile. So we may have mutual friends here. And so again, you see where we're going here with this network. We're casting these nets out all over the place.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm not going over there. We do sit down or we do a virtual. I'm not asking you, hey, Heather, do you have a job? That, you know that right away. That's why I'm reaching out. But you as a veteran want to help, because guess what? I want to have more veterans in our facility, in our organization. So I have a vested interest in this. So again, you go in there, you ask them 6 or 7, 8 questions, open-ended questions. Tell me about Heather. Tell me about how'd you get into Toyota? Was it something you wanted to do? Is this the area that you wanted to do? Did your background in college, was that supportive? Or what would you do differently? You get some really cool answers with these people. But then on the other end, people like to talk about themselves. And so again, you get this dialogue, and now they feel like, it's pretty cool. This, Mike's got his crap together, or Heather's got her crap together. And so again, you write them a thank you card, you handwrite it. You don't send it on an email, because again, it's a point of differentiation, right? That's how we want to brand ourselves. And then at that point, maybe we're talking once every, couple, 3 months, a month, maybe send a little note. Hey, Heather, just want to reach out, let you know, hey, I'm still looking, I've been, looking, hey, I thought I had 3 other jobs, this one job that was in sales that I thought would be a good, would I be a good fit? Because first of all, you're going to tell me a couple things that I want to know. One, is that job in that department really where I want to work? Because if a guy or girl's a dirtbag that's in senior leadership over there, you're going, Mike,
you don't want to be there.
I want to be there. So that's good. So you just save me time. On the same part of it, guess what? You might be buddies with that person, at the end of the day, and say, hey, listen, I got this vet, she's solid. She's got a background in this. She's this, and, I've seen her awards. She's locked on. She's got her stuff together. That's how you do it. And that's how you're going to get an interview. And you say, hey, listen, can you, if I could send you, first of all, could I use you for a recommendation? And, you're asking them down the road after you built this relationship with them, can you do this for me? And the answer is going to be yes, yes, and yes. And I will physically hand deliver your stuff to HR. And it'll get, instead of the stack being 3 feet, tall, you're up the top, you're getting in the top 5 or 6, must interview this person type thing. So yeah, that's what goes on behind the curtain.
So yeah, that kind of goes into that analogy you used, so that you're by offering this free advice that cost you 120,000, you're teaching all the rest of these veterans how to fish. And I thought, man, that's like such an applicable analogy because it's true. And something that I tried to do in this podcast is when people think of network, they automatically think job, but I didn't want them to always think that. I also wanted them to know that networking meant when you get out, finding something, someone, or an organization that fulfills your purpose so you have purpose again. Make sure your finances are in check when you get out. Have your financial health, have your physical and mental health. Make sure all these elements are taken care of, and you can network for all of those, not just a job. And I really wanted to emphasize to veterans through the different guests that I brought on, they all are completely different. And, take a little snippet from each episode and use that for your own network. And you've created something that I think is just beautiful, is a solid transition experience through this Valor Club. Can you go into a little bit about what the Valor Club is?
Yes, Heather, I can. All that said that we've talked about before are tools to transition, right? That's a particular thing. But one of the things that really became very, very apparent to me, and I thought I knew my Marines and sailors, I really did. As a field grade officer, I thought I knew them, when in actuality, I didn't. I really didn't know them. And when I started interviewing them, doing qualitative, I did a mixed method for your readers or your audience. Mixed method is quantitative, qualitative. Quantitative being surveys where we get large amounts of people to do questions, but then what we do is what we call purposeful sampling on the back end, and we take key demographics. I'm looking for females, I'm looking for people of color, looking for Caucasian. I'm looking for different types of people, and then I interview them in depth to find out things that I should have asked on the on the quantitative part of the surveys. And what I found is there was a pattern. There was a pattern for young Marines and sailors, at least the ones I interviewed. They don't know anything. They don't have very much financial acumen in terms of being able to balance their budget. And why would they? Because they were getting paid twice a month, right? Now they're unemployed, or they have a period of unemployment or underemployment where they're not making that much money. They have existing debts, the car payment, all the other stuff. They've never bought insurance. They've never done a lease agreement. They lived in the barracks, as we all know. They don't even know how to cook. And so when I was looking at all that, I thought, man, again, we're not framing it right. Yeah, they have one heck of a resume they've got, but they don't even know how to eat properly and have nutrition classes or access mental and behavioral health. Or, we know that 52% of our population actually registers and utilizes VA services. That's 48% that are not utilizing it. You want to know a crazy statistic with suicide? I mean, of the 20 that we have that commit suicide every day, which is a bumper sticker that I think is overstated sometimes, because it's not that, it's very difficult. You can get those numbers a lot of different ways. But of the 20 a day that hurt themselves, 70% of those 20 did not register or utilize VA services. Okay.
Wow. Yeah,
and that's a VA study that came out 2019. I didn't put that in my lit review, but I caught it afterwards, and I've really been utilizing that to build the Valor Club. So the goal of the Valor Club was to create a residential living and learning community to support the transition process. Because again, why do some vets succeed and other ones fail? It came down to, a lot of it was the lack of a community and comprehensive support. First of all, if you were a single mother living in your car, mental health is number 13 on the priority list. Okay. I'm just trying to survive the next hour without being assaulted. I mean, that's, you're in South Central somewhere.
Situational.
It is what it is. I mean, that's basic human needs. And, as a psychologist, you study that. So for us, the biggest gap, and again, my lens has been Los Angeles. So that's where, again, as a veteran commissioner and other commitments that I have here, I got 5,000 homeless vets here. Okay. 5,000. The crazy thing about this is everybody wants to say, well, we'll build them housing. Okay, well, that's great. But the problem is why did they get to become homeless? They're missing the social, the
That's one
biopsychosocial.
component, just one component they need.
Exactly. So that's not framing it right. You have to be able to create their ability to fish, right? Show them how to fish, train them how to fish, and then of course practical application, and then of course mastery of fishing, right? And so that's the learning evolution. So now we thought, well, why don't we bought 200 acres of property. It was an old golf course, and we had it master developed. We're developing it now. We have Gensler, who's one of the largest architects in the United States. They actually built our program. We've got 1,400 units of residential affordable housing. We're putting an education center in there, a conference center. We're putting in an amphitheater. We've got 9 holes of golf we're going to put in there. I mean, it's going to be a nice community. But the other thing that I learned in my study was the divorcing of the community, right? So you get your
Mhm.
DD 214 or you go terminal, you immediately cut that. So now you get thrown into Los Angeles or Chicago or wherever you're going, San Antonio, wherever. You have no network. Okay. Now there's things inside that city, but it takes you a while to navigate that. Even with social media, it's very difficult. And they're really not in your tribe. You're kind of the step kid until you become accepted. So it's not an immediate gratification factor. So what we were trying to do is saying, listen, why don't we build a community, residential community, where Heathers and Mikes can leave active duty service. We really don't know what we want to do, and that's okay. Come to the Valor Club. You got a place that's safe. Okay. It's affordable housing. So, for example, we're working with the city of San Antonio, and we're making our facility affordable housing. Now, that's an important thing for everybody because one, they're short on that in the city, which does,
Mhm.
if you are short affordable housing, it raises the rents because of demand, supply, demand, right? So supply is down, demand goes up. Now, what moves up with it is your pricing, right? So that's why you get these inflationary. That's why in Los Angeles, you know, 1,500 square foot house is $4,000 a month. That's in Burbank. West Side's probably more than that. So it's not what the actual physical thing's worth. It's actually what the market rate suggests it'd be. So we're building these things. So if you use your GI Bill, if you come out, you want to go to school, get training, you're getting 16, I think it's 1645 for their BH, for their 911 GI Bill. We're going to charge about $1,000, for our stuff. But it's open to families. It's open to dependents. Even if, you and I are married and I'm still in active duty service, you can go live there if you want,
Mhm.
while you're doing your training. We just want you to be involved in cultural training, cultural assimilation. We want to be able to support you. We want to be able to work. We're working with probably 24 nonprofits, VSOs, veteran service organizations, to do social services on our campus as well as off, because again, we got to teach you how to work out of the base, right? Model,
Right.
navigate. You got to get on a bus. You don't have a car, no problem. There's a bus right across the street that'll take you anywhere through San Antonio you want to go. This is your plan. You got to build this. This is important for navigation because again, going back to our first conversation, they don't have autonomy. The autonomy is not built in to their as a civilian, for our transition service members and veterans. So that's the goal. And so you'll go there. We're building a 4,500 seat arena. It's going to have like 8 basketball courts and beautiful fitness center, all that stuff. That's going to
And
be it.
yoga studios.
You go, and
We're
there you go.
excited about that.
So we'll recruit you. So you'll be over
Yes.
there doing, not virtual though. You got to physically be there. So that'll be
Yeah.
good.
So
So
yeah, that's all amazing stuff. I love what you're doing. I think that's so important that you recognize that there are other things going on than just giving someone a house or just giving someone a job. And that you've kind of pretty much answered my signature question to everybody. I usually ask people if you had a piece of advice to give somebody that's currently active duty that's looking at getting out, what would it be? And I think what we've established through this conversation is to use your resources to develop your network. Don't be afraid to do that and to learn how to fish. And once you learn how to fish, show somebody else.
Mhm.
because we're all connected and we're all here to help each other. And I'm so glad we had this conversation. I love talking to you every time because you just always like get other things going in my mind. And
Well, I don't have any
and,
ideas, so I got to get them from somebody. So I got to surround myself with smart people.
but yeah, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you've been, and congratulations again on finishing your degree and now becoming doctor. That's awesome. And hopefully maybe someday I'll get there. I'm thinking about it. So
Listen, I was told on the first day of school when we did our introductions, there's no right time. There's only
mhm,
right now. And
right.
that's where, I want to challenge you and all your listeners because, again, you know, what does school really do for you? Yeah, it makes you a little smarter, but at the end of the day, it creates a platform for you to help others.
Mhm,
I think the other thing I want to really recommend to your reader or your listeners is, and it's hard at the time, but try to enjoy the journey. And I know it gets
mhm,
stressful and
yes.
on all that, but really, I think, again, your faith, people's faith in God or whatever they believe in, everything works out for good. It's just you have to be open and by prepping yourself with schooling or certifications or whatever, but follow that dream. Don't settle because if you settle, you're going to be really an unhappy camper. And sometimes you just got to take a risk. And at the end of the day, you're a veteran. You'll get through this. This is
I will.
survivable, but you again don't settle, and you're going to have a great life.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thank you.
today that wraps up our episode. We're so grateful for all this great information that you just gave us that we could utilize in our own life. This is 7 Echo Podcast. I am your host, Heather Clark, sponsored by 7 Eagle Group, bringing you the stories of fellow veterans so that you too can build your own veteran network. Thank you and have a great day.